Just as food is necessary for sustaining physical life, even so, meditation and worship are needed for keeping up the spiritual life. The physical man must be made more ethereal by taking pure food. Moral man, more self-denying and philosophical. Mental man, more penetrating and profound. And spiritual man, more devotional. So we start the first lecture, The Body-Mind Connection, by Dr. Rich Simador. Go ahead, Dr. Rich.
All right. Good. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Oh, I say good morning, but I guess it could be afternoon or 5 o'clock somewhere. So if anyone's having a cocktail, cheers. I'm having coffee. Okay. I'm very happy to be here with you today. Thank you for granting me the gift of your time. I hope that I can give you something positive to marinate on and that it's something that may also inspire you. I want to thank Jerry for the invitation today. Thank you, Jerry. I want to acknowledge you not just for your friendship, but to let you know I appreciate the confidence and encouragement to put this presentation together. To be totally honest with everyone, I have a lot that I want to share today, and I was worried I might forget some of it, so I wrote it down. So if you notice any awkward pauses, just pretend you don't notice. And if the delivery sucks, just focus on the fantastic content. All right. Well, I've been a chiropractor for 25 years now. I grew up in Hollywood. I was born in California. I'm not sure it's something to brag about, but it's something people find amusing. Lots of cool stories growing up in Tinseltown. One of my highlights was climbing the H on the Hollywood sign when I was 17. I'm pretty sure you can't get away with that today. Lucky for me, I stayed away from all the big city temptations, and that's because when I was 5 years old, my next door neighbor was a janitor at Dodger Stadium. He used to bring me baseballs and broken bats from the dugouts. And because of this, I grew up loving baseball. And that's all I wanted to do every day, all day. When I got to high school, I hurt my elbow, and my coach, he drove me to his chiropractor during lunch. And at 3 o'clock, I was back on the mound pitching. I became fascinated with the body's ability to heal itself with no drugs, no surgery. I eventually met another chiropractor that mentored me into visiting a chiropractic college, and that was almost 30 years ago. And the next thing you know, I'm a grandfather with another one on the way. Life happens, man. The town that I live in now and that I practice in is called Thousand Oaks. It's about 40 minutes north of Los Angeles. There's a biotech company here called Amgen. You might have heard of it. Many of my first patients were employees from this company, and so I'd get lots of scientists who would come to see me. And as you can imagine, or at least as I imagined, these people are very logic driven, science-based, and because of that, I didn't want to risk getting marginalized by bringing up anything other than something that might be considered woo-woo or metaphysical. So I stuck to the tried and true remedies of physical therapy, which was fine. But when you're in this field long enough, trying to help people through these aches and pains, sooner or later you come to realize without spirituality, without respecting what's going on the inside, you can only help so many people. And yeah, it's true. We sit too much. We need to get stronger. We need to lose weight. We need to eat better. But there's usually a bit more to these chronic aches and pains. One day I decided, screw it. I have to be true to myself, and I started telling my story about what holistic healing is to me. And guess what? Turns out many of the scientists that I thought would turn on me became my biggest fans. Many of them admitted that they actually hated the big pharma model. Turns out there's more to healing than taking away pain. And the reason for this is health is more than just the absence of symptoms. It's a physical, spiritual, and emotional package. The trick for me was how do we tell that story to people who want to separate and compartmentalize this idea of health? And what I mean by that is your body's not like a car. When your transmission goes bad, you take it to the shop, they drop in a new one, and out you drive, problem solved. Knees and backs, they just don't cooperate that way. Pain is mysterious, it's frustrating, and everyone heals differently. One day, Jerry and I got to talking about this topic, and that's how we got here today. That's when Jerry challenged me to organize this message into bite-sized pieces so that I can share them both with you and my patients. So let's get going. Let's talk about pain. Slide one, Jerry. Acute is it, I'm sorry, I can't see the slides. I'm guessing it's up. Okay. Acute, for our purposes here, is sudden and short-term problems that normally resolve in a few days or weeks. Think common cold or even a broken bone. Or maybe you just slept funny and now your neck hurts. They're not fun, but in a few days to weeks, you're back in the game. Chronic pain, on the other hand, which is what we want to focus on today, develops slowly and may worsen over time, maybe months to years. Common chronic conditions are arthritis, Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, chronic kidney disease, etc. Unlike acute conditions, chronic health conditions cannot be cured. They can only be controlled and managed. These people need a plan, which may include taking medication, changing their diet, physical therapy, meditation, daily exercise, etc. But let's take it further. Next slide. Chronic pain can also be in conjunction with another component known as chronic stress. These are long-term or difficult to resolve problems. Can be any of the ones you see in this slide, but can be much more than that, like feeling stuck in a bad job, with a bad boss, a toxic relationship, a financial crisis, divorce, grief. And so again, long-term, difficult to resolve issues. Maybe worse because they're lacking the tools, the knowledge, the wisdom, the courage to move past these crisis events. And so combine chronic pain and chronic stress, and the result can be a rapid decline in health. Well, it involves chemicals called cortisol, which is a stress hormone. Cortisol in your body is not absorbed by managing stress. That's not absorbed by managing stress will result in inflammation. Inflammation leads to tissue damage and things like heart disease, leaky gut, irritable bowel, arthritis, and all kinds of problems that end in itis. Itis referring to inflammation. And I can sum it up in one slide. Next. The body sheds the tears the eyes won't. For me, that's a very profound statement because I found that about 80% of the chronic pain cases that I see in my office, they're not just purely physical. They all have at least some emotional component. Next slide. I had a patient for me that came to see me a while back with a frozen shoulder. She couldn't raise her arm over her head, but the first thing she said was, "I know it's because of my daughter." I asked her what she meant, and she told me that her daughter had a wedding coming up and that her daughter's fiance was a nice guy, but she wasn't sure he was the best choice for her. Well, she came in about a half a dozen times or so, and each time we'd make progress, but we couldn't get ahead of it. It would get better, and then it would get tight again. Eventually, she fell off our schedule. Then, about 6 months later, her husband came in. It was something unrelated, but as he was leaving, I asked him how his wife's shoulder was doing, and he says, "Oh, that's all better. We had the wedding, and it's been good ever since." In this case, she knew the reason for her shoulder pain, but not everybody is so intuitive. You may be familiar with traditional Chinese medicine and how they associate emotions with organs. Next slide. Now, typically, I don't get patients who come see me particularly for lung, heart, kidney, and liver issues. But knowing about this traditional Chinese medicine philosophy, it's always interesting to explore these chronic conditions with these patients so that we can share a broader perspective with them. For example, the lungs are known as the seat of grief. So when I have a patient who comes to see me for who happens to have a chronic respiratory infection, say like asthma, I look for and address the organic causes first. But one of the questions I always ask in the case history is, when did this start? If the answer goes back to a major loss, a trauma, or a tragedy, many times it's a clue to me that physical treatment alone isn't going to be enough to help them. More specifically, in my world, for example, chronic neck pain, it can be associated with stubbornness or inflexibility when it comes to seeing things from multiple viewpoints, or low back pain, which is related to some sort of lack of emotional support, or knee pain, which might be a fear of moving forward in life. A good resource for this and lots of other emotional connections to body pain is, next slide, Jerry, Metaphysical Anatomy. This is a great book. It's a fun book. You can look up almost any physical ailment and see the correlated emotional theme. It's fun and it's definitely thought-provoking. Sometimes the mere realization of a mind-body connection to your condition can take you on an entirely new path. So, all this to say, there's clearly a connection between mind-body. And although it's been widely studied and understood, the trick here is learning to listen to be open to what your body is saying. So I have a mentor, and he says, if you want to understand your chronic pain, take a look at your life. What are the themes? Who are you angry with? What are you ignoring or suppressing? In other words, what are you not dealing with in life that's keeping your soul from growing and evolving? Learn to face these obstacles, and you'll be on your way to freeing yourself. Remember, we're on a journey. It's not easy, but your challenges are your challenges for a reason. If the willingness to confront these difficulties in the face of pain, it's the willingness to confront these difficulties in the face of pain. That's where we get the best answers. Okay, let's get into the good stuff. This is another great resource that I've started to recommend to my patients, which I hope you'll enjoy. Next slide, Jerry, please. It's called Rays of the Dawn. You might be familiar with it. It's by Dr. Thurman Fleet. Rays of the Dawn by Thurman Fleet. He was a chiropractor from the mid to early 1900s. Dr. Fleet had quite a life leading up to writing this book. He was a World War I veteran. He eventually found his way to chiropractic because of looking for resources and ways to resolve the injuries that he suffered during World War I, including things like Agent Orange and artillery shelling. In fact, he got so much relief with chiropractic that he became a chiropractor himself. Along the way, he had an illumination, and that illumination became the inspiration for this book. This book, it's a great source of practical spiritual guidance. Some people call it a magic book. They say magic book because it can provide insight at any moment just by flipping open to a random page. This book in particular seems to resonate with where you may find yourself emotionally at any particular time, and it may show you what you need to learn or be reminded of at a particular time. Next, the book's comprised of 3 sections: the body, the mind, and the spirit. Some people have also called this book a health handbook. Like I mentioned, he had an illumination where he was inspired to put thoughts into a book, and the intention was to encapsulate the essentials for creating a healthy and fulfilling life. As far as the 3 sections, it's broken down into the body, the mind, and the spirit. The body section speaks to dietary suggestions, proper sanitation of your body, and suggestions for moving your body. It's very matter-of-factual. It's a very easy to follow guide. For example, his suggestions for movement are very simple. Just simply move every body part through its range of motion every day until you feel satisfied. Don't even count the reps. And to me, it makes sense. Think about it. How many of us on this call think about simply moving your neck muscles every day? Look up, look down, look left, look right, bend left, bend right. Imagine looking up to the trees for birds and predators. Today, all we do is stare at computers and backup cameras in our cars. Imagine now moving your neck in every direction every day. Don't worry about how many times. Stop when you feel like the job is done. It could be 5 seconds, could be 60 seconds. Now do the same thing with your low back, your hip, your ankles, your knees, your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists. You get the idea. And that's it. For diet, his advice is very simple. Avoid sugar, avoid processed food, avoid frozen and canned foods. Fresh is best. Again, very simple and practical advice. Okay. Then the bulk of the book is further separated in two sections that he calls the laws of the mind and the laws of the soul. As you can imagine, the laws of the mind have a more negative tone, or as you can see, whereas the laws of the soul carry a more positive and uplifting sentiment. Also, you'll notice the laws are paired with one another. In this book, the best way to appreciate this contrast is to read the corresponding laws back and forth, like fear to faith. Ultimately, Dr. Fleet suggests that living your life even 51% of the time in the laws of the soul compared to the laws of the mind, and you're very likely that you'll find some inner peace. There's so much to share in this book, but rather than jump around, I think the best way to enjoy an introduction to it is to just focus on one chapter. So for today, I chose to focus on the chapter of fear because there's a lot of very specific mind-body points worth exploring. So let's take a look. Let's go next slide. Fear. Okay, he says, each of us has a body, a mind, and a soul. In order to maintain a perfect state of health, it's necessary for us to obey the laws of nature governing these parts. Having completed the laws that govern the human body, we now consider the mind and its faculties in their relation to health. By analyzing the disruptive forces that operate in the mind, we can show their actions and just why they should be eliminated. Okay, so one of the things about Dr. Fleet is he really packs in the words. So that was a mouthful. Uh, Sometimes I find I have to reread um, more than once to draw out their intentions. So let's break that down a bit. Remember, he divides the book into the laws of the body, the mind, and the spirit. In this, he's saying, now that we've talked about the laws that govern the body, let's talk about the mind. It's different than other philosophy books that you might have found because he organizes the way that he organizes things, for example, contrasting these emotions, fear, worry, hate, jealousy, all laws of the mind. Faith, hope, generosity, and aspiration, these are laws of the spirit. Okay, so actually, let me clarify something because when I was speaking to Jerry, he explained to me that in Theosophy, there's a lower mind and a higher mind. If that sounds familiar to some of you, if you're in that line of thinking, then for the sake of this, when we're referring to Dr. Fleet, imagine when you read the mind, he's talking to the lower mind, and higher mind is referring probably more to the laws of the spirit, okay? Okay, back to the paragraph then. Here he's saying in the last paragraph, by analyzing the destructive forces that operate in the mind, we can show their action and just why they should be eliminated. Okay, so here's the point. It's as if he's saying the emotions of the mind are things to get rid of. Okay, so keep that handy as we move forward in this fear chapter. Next. Fear is a stimulus to action, and the individual instinctively prepares for fight or flight. Primitive humans found an outlet for this preparatory energy by contending with human and animal enemies with natural forces that were hostile to their well-being. In modern life, these preparatory actions do not always find expression in physical exertion. In fact, such expression is a rare occurrence. When we fail to act, fear becomes inverted. For that which cannot go outward must go inward. Thus we create panic within, and our whole organism is disturbed. Okay, so again, another mouthful. What he's talking about here is fight or flight, a sympathetic, parasympathetic reaction. Okay, in primitive man, fear inspired a survival instinct, which was fueled by adrenaline, which gives us the strength to hold your ground, say, against a bear, uh, and the energy to get away from this bear. And again, so let's look at it again. Primitive humans found an outlet for this preparatory energy by contending with human and animal enemies and with natural forces that were hostile to their well-being. Okay, and he's talking about In primitive man, fear inspired a survival reaction. In modern man, we don't have to physically fight anymore for survival. So, like he says, fear becomes inverted. In other words, we internalize this fear. If we were to physically fight, we'd exhaust that adrenaline. We'd dump and vent that fury, and then we'd move on. We see this in dogs every day. They get angry at the UPS guy when he knocks on your door. They want to tear the guy up, but as soon as he drives away, they're back to playing as if it never happened. Once it's done for them, it's over. They don't fester, they don't dwell. That's a healthy way to deal with adrenaline. But he's saying for modern man, fear gets inverted or goes inward, and our body becomes disturbed, i.e., gets sick. Okay. So again, here we are. The body sheds the tears, the eyes won't. Okay, next slide. It has been said that we find our significance by working through difficulty, not by cringing in its presence. Whenever fear presents itself, it should be met, analyzed, and if possible, intelligently eliminated. If we cannot perform some intelligent activity when confronted with fear, then we should do something foolish, but action is imperative. What does he mean here by foolish? He's saying when you encounter fear, do something. Don't just sit in the emotion. The answer is actually in the next paragraph. Activity obscures the emotion of fear by bringing our thought processes and other constructive emotions into play. Furthermore, activity liberates and utilizes pent-up energy. Indecision leads to perdition. It's better to make a wrong move and later rectify the mistake than to remain undecided as to what course of action to pursue. Okay, then perdition, I looked it up, it refers to a hell-like state. So he's not about indecision. Got to take action. Next slide. There's thousands in our hospitals who are suffering from physical and mental disorders. Thousands whose minds and bodies are wrecked because they've not learned to get rid themselves of needless fears. They and their doctors are more concerned with treating the effects than with eliminating the cause of their illness, the demon of fear. Okay. To me, this might be the most important sentence in the entire book. Okay, I'm going to read that sentence again. There are thousands in our hospitals who are suffering from physical and mental disorders, thousands whose minds and bodies are wrecked because they have not learned to rid themselves of needless fears. Needless fears. Think about it. Listen to what it sounds like without it. Thousands thousands of minds whose bodies are wrecked because they have not learned to rid themselves of fears. It's probably still valid on some level, but no, needless. These people are making shit up in their heads needlessly. They've destroyed their bodies and minds over needless fears. It's a great sentence, right? I love that sentence. If there's a takeaway for you today, is don't ruin your health over needless fears. Okay, so good. And next, instead of coordinating the body and the mind into a cure, the doctor did just the opposite, thereby making the patient a great deal worse. Further, the fear generated in her mind brought on other physical symptoms, loss of appetite, wrinkles, loss of energy, etc. The fear completely upset her mind. This scenario right there occurs in 99% of medical visits. I can't tell you how often a patient will come to see me after visiting their medical doctor. They're freaked out because they've been given a diagnosis. You have sciatica, you have a slipped disc, you have shoulder bursitis, you name it, but it instills a fear now because they've been labeled and they risk becoming the diagnosis. The problem is the doctor plants this seed of fear because patients don't know any better and they fall into a trap and then fear ensues. And by the way, no one's saying that doctors are doing this on purpose. I think what happens is people, they really want definite answers. They want a fix. And sometimes an accurate diagnosis is what gets someone past the problem. But other times, people just want quick and easy because they don't want to put in the work. A good example for that to me is type 2 diabetes. It's a totally reversible condition if you lose weight, if you change your diet, and if you start exercising. Or you accept the diagnosis of diabetic, you buy into the fear, you believe you're broken, and you accept the pills are going to be the only way or you'll die. And then you miss the lesson, taking back your own health. Okay, let's keep going because he's about to break down how to handle fear, and that's in the next slide. So Dr. Fleet gives you four ways to handle fear. Fear is a destructive emotion. Anyone who suffers from it should know and comply with the laws governing fear. Number one, find out what it is that causes you to fear. Number two, eliminate the fear through intelligent action. Number three, if it is not within your power to eliminate the fear, then consult someone who has made a study of the human mind. Present your case to your doctor or mental healer, who in turn will analyze this fear, then use your intelligence and willpower, eliminate the fear. Number four, do not fear needlessly. Analyze your fears in the light of truth, and you will find that there it is in reality, nothing worthy of being feared. Okay, here's what I want to share with you about this section here. Now, I'm not sure if Fleet studied Stoicism, but this is classic Stoicism philosophy. So essentially, 1 through 3, what he's saying is just look at everything and you say, I have control over this or I don't. That's what 1 through 3 is about. If I have control over it, what's there to be afraid of? Just do something about it. I'm going to take care of it. If I don't have control over it, then you just give it up to God right there, because you're wasting any time worrying or being afraid of it because you don't have control over it. So 1 through 3 is a summary of that. Everything that comes down the pike, you're like, I have control over this or I don't. If I do, okay, well, what am I worried about? Great, take action. Or no, I don't have control, and then you give it to God. Okay, number 4, this is Fleet's own addition to Stoic philosophy, which is do not fear needlessly. I think what he's saying here is you're a soul, not a body. And anything that you could possibly be afraid of is based on a belief that you are your body. He says, if you think you're a body, of course you're going to be afraid of stuff. But if you realize you're an eternal soul with no beginning and no end, and you just have a body the way you have a shirt on, then what are you going to be afraid of? Nothing. So when he says in reality, there's nothing to worry of being feared, that's what he's referring to. If you really knew for sure that you're your body and I'm not my body, I'm a soul, then as Fleet points out, what are you going to worry about? Nothing. What do you have to be angry about? Nothing. What are you going to be jealous about? Nothing. What are you going to be greedy about? Nothing. What are you going to hate? Nothing. All these negative emotions are based on the fact that you're in the body. Okay, last slide. When we think negatively, we attract to ourselves those forces that are destructive to our being. It's just a good sentence. When we think negatively, we attract to ourselves those forces that are destructive to our being. Okay, I will wrap this up like this. Most of our fears and struggles come from one of 3 things: love, money, or yourself. If it's love, think mother, father, brother, sister, child, spouse. If it's money, think job, career, finances. Or is it you? Is it how you see the world? Ask yourself. Those aches and pains that you chalk up to old age, are they really separate from your soul? What are the themes that you're working on in this life that you're chasing or that are chasing you? Is it one of the mind emotions? Is it anger, hate, worry, criticism? And the question is, what would it mean to you to move your balance more in favor of the laws of the spirit over those of the mind? Ask yourself this and see what answers your inner self gives you. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope I provided you a little bit of food for thought. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rich. Wonderful. We had a lot of food for thought, and also the fact that there is so much of theosophy in what you said. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And now